Title: The Park, the Pit Bull, and the Price of a Turned Back. The gavel's sharp crack was a sound that could stop a heart, a prelude to a battle not of fists, but of facts, a clash of memories set in a sun-dappled dog park that would culminate here, under the unblinking gaze of the law and the formidable Judge Judy. This wasn't just a case about a dog bite. It was a story of a perfect afternoon, shattered, of fear and accusation, of a moment of panic that left a permanent scar, both on skin and on conscience. A story that began with a simple, joyful outing. Christopher Rovaris, a man whose life revolved around structure and order, had taken his beloved 10-month-old Welsh Corgi puppy, a fluffy bundle of energy named Merlin, to their usual sanctuary, the fenced-in dog park where leashes were unhooked and freedom reigned. For Christopher, these afternoons were a sacred ritual, a time to watch Merlin's comically short legs churn through the grass, his world one of simple, unadulterated joy. The sun was warm on his back, the air filled with the happy barks and yips of a dozen other dogs, a symphony of canine contentment. He felt the familiar wash of peace, the stress of his work week melting away as he watched Merlin tentatively approach a placid old Labrador. This idyllic scene, however, was about to be violently rewritten, its tranquility shattered by the arrival of another duo, a pairing that would alter the course of Christopher's life. Into this pastoral setting walked Ashley Pete, a woman whose demeanor seemed, to Christopher's later recollection, immediately guarded, her posture rigid as she unclipped the leash from a powerful, muscular pit bull named Titan. The air shifted palpably. The playful bark seemed to quiet for a moment as Titan, a solid mass of brindle-coated muscle, surveyed the park with an intensity that felt different from the other dog's playful curiosity. A cold trickle of unease, a primal warning, traced its way down Christopher's spine, a feeling he would later curse himself for ignoring in the name of not wanting to be judgmental, of giving every dog and every owner a fair chance. He watched, his heart beginning to beat a little faster, as Titan didn't just run. He prowled, his movements not playful, but purposeful, a predator assessing a field of potential challengers or prey. Merlin, innocent and utterly unaware of the social dynamics of powerful dogs, trotted over with a playful yip, his tail wagging like a metronome. Titan's response was instantaneous and chilling, a low, rumbling growl that seemed to vibrate through the very ground, a sound that was all threat and no play, causing Merlin to freeze, his own tiny growl a pathetic, squeaking defense against a thunderstorm. Christopher's peace evaporated, replaced by a tight coil of anxiety in his gut. He saw Titan's body stiffen, his head lower, his focus laser-like on the terrified corgi. This wasn't a dog introducing himself. This was a dog establishing dominance in a language of pure, unvarnished aggression. Other owners, sensing the sudden dangerous shift in the atmosphere, began subtly calling their own pets, their voices laced with a nervous tension, pulling their smaller dogs closer, creating a wide, unspoken berth around Ashley Pete's pit bull. It was a silent consensus, a crowd of strangers collectively recognizing a threat, their own enjoyment of the day, now secondary to the safety of their furry family members. Christopher's mind raced, his protective instincts screaming at him to intervene, to snatch his puppy from harm's way. He made the decision that would define the next year of his life. He would grab Merlin and leave, to de-escalate, to protect, to simply get out. He never took his eyes off the pit bull as he moved, his body angled, his intent clear. He was bending at the waist, his arms reaching down for the small, trembling form of his corgi. His entire world narrowed to the simple act of retrieving his dog and retreating. It was in that vulnerable, exposed moment, with his back turned to the threat, as he was most focused on salvation, that the attack came. There was no loud snarl, no dramatic lunge that anyone could clearly narrate afterward. It was a blur of brutal, efficient motion. Titan closed the short distance in a heartbeat, and Christopher felt a searing, white-hot explosion of pain in his left buttock. A pain so sharp and shocking, it stole the breath from his lungs. It wasn't a nip or a warning snap. It was a full, clamping bite, the powerful jaws of the pit bull sinking deep into the muscle tissue, the pressure immense and terrifying. He screamed, a raw, involuntary sound of agony and shock, his body jerking violently as he stumbled forward, his grip on Merlin failing. The world dissolved into a dizzying vortex of pain and panic. He could hear Ashley's voice, sharp and accusing, yelling something about him kicking her dog, a claim that felt so ludicrous, so divorced from the reality of his helpless, bent-over position, that it added a layer of surreal horror to the physical trauma. He was bleeding, he was terrified, and he was being accused of provoking the very violence he was trying to escape. Through a haze of pain, he saw Ashley quickly leash Titan and begin to hurry away, making no move to check on him, to offer help, or to provide her information. "Wait!" he managed to gasp, clutching his torn jeans, feeling the warm, sticky spread of blood. "Your dog, his shots. Are his shots current?" Ashley paused, throwing a dismissive glance over her shoulder. "Yes, he's fine," she snapped, her tone implying he was an inconvenience. Before she turned and all but fled the park, leaving Christopher alone, wounded and humiliated, surrounded by a circle of stunned and sympathetic strangers. The aftermath was a different kind of pain, a deep, throbbing ache that made sitting impossible, a constellation of purple and blue bruising that bloomed across his skin, and worse, the gnawing psychological terror of not knowing. Had the dog really had its shots? Was he now at risk for rabies, for some horrific infection? The emergency room visit was a blur of paperwork and painkillers. The doctors cleaning the deep puncture wounds, their concerned faces doing little to calm his racing mind. The medical bills began to arrive, cold impersonal documents that quantified his trauma in dollars and cents. 847 LNs, $187, numbers that represented the tangible cost of Ashley Pete's negligence. But the intangible costs were far greater. The sleepless nights, the jolt of fear that shot through him every time he saw a large dog on the street. The way Merlin himself had become skittish and fearful. The joyful trust of the dog park forever broken. He took days off work, not just for doctor's appointments, but to navigate the frustrating maze of filing a police report, who, bafflingly, did not issue a ticket to Ashley, and eventually this lawsuit. His quest for justice becoming a second, unpaid job that consumed his thoughts and his time. He felt a burning sense of injustice, a fury that Ashley had not only allowed this to happen, but had then abandoned him and lied about his actions, painting him as some kind of animal abuser to cover her own culpability. This fury is what propelled him into this courtroom, to stand before the unimpressible Judge Judy, to lay out his pain and his proof, hoping for a validation that the world outside had so far denied him. And now, in the stark reality of the courtroom, Ashley Pete stood her ground, her defense not one of remorse, but of deflection. She painted a picture for Judge Judy of a man violently attacking her beloved pet, a narrative of Christopher in a fit of irrational anger, trying to kick and even punch Titan. She claimed she saw it all, this unprovoked assault, and that the bite was merely Titan's justified self-defense. As she spoke, Christopher felt a fresh wave of anger and disbelief. Her story was a complete fabrication, a theatrical performance designed to shield her from the consequences of her dog's dangerous behavior and her own irresponsible flight from the scene. He watched Judge Judy's face, those famously perceptive eyes missing nothing, and he prayed she could see through the lies, see the truth of his bent-over, vulnerable posture, the undeniable logic of a bite on the behind. The judge's interrogation was a masterclass in cutting through the fog of he said, she said. She dismissed Ashley's vague claims about what other owners were thinking. She zeroed in on the illogic of trying to punch a dog while in the act of bending down to pick up a puppy, and she focused with laser precision on the one action that spoke volumes: Ashley's flight. Judge Judy White's voice was like a scalpel, precise and sharp, as she dismantled Ashley's defense. "You didn't stay around," she stated, her tone leaving no room for argument. "You didn't give him your information. You knew that your dog bit him." She highlighted the profound irresponsibility of this act, the sheer callousness of leaving an injured man without the means to verify the dog's vaccination history, forcing him to live with the shadow of potential disease hanging over him. This, more than anything else, seemed to cement Judge Judy Cole's judgment. The moment of the ruling was a catharsis so powerful, it nearly brought Christopher to his knees. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $3,000. Judge Judy declared, her gavel striking the sound of finality, of justice served. The $3,000 would cover the medical bills that hung over him. A financial weight lifted, but the true value of the judgment was far greater. It was a public declaration that he, Christopher Riveras, had been wronged, that his pain was real, that his version of events was the truth, and that Ashley Pete was legally and morally responsible for the trauma inflicted by her dog, Titan. It was a validation that washed over him, cleansing the lingering bitterness, replacing it with a hard-won sense of closure. Lesson for the listeners and viewers. The story of Christopher and Ashley serves as a stark and vital reminder that pet ownership is not a right but a profound responsibility that extends far beyond providing food and shelter. When you bring an animal into your life, especially one with the potential for significant strength, you are accepting liability for its actions at all times. The dog park, while a space for freedom, does not absolve you of this duty. The moment a dog bites a human being, the owner's obligation is immediate and non-negotiable. You must render aid, you must provide your information, and you must face the consequences with honesty and integrity. Fleeing the scene, as Ashley did, or crafting false narratives to shift blame, only compounds the original sin of negligence, transforming an accident into an act of cowardice and deepening the victim's trauma. True responsibility means having the courage to say, "I am sorry, my dog bit you, and here is how I will make it right." This case underscores that the law, in the form of a clear-eyed Judge Judy, will ultimately see through deception and hold individuals accountable for the damage they and their animals cause. Let this be a lesson to every dog owner. Your companion's actions are a direct reflection of your own character and accountability.